What if the reason you feel so exhausted, so stretched, so unlike yourself has nothing to do with how much you're doing and everything to do with how much you're carrying? What if your capacity isn't actually disappearing? What if it's simply trying to tell you something? Today, we're going to be talking about capacity, what it really is, what quietly steals it, and why so many women, especially women in this beautiful, full, messy season of life, feel like they're barely holding it together. And what becomes possible when we stop trying to carry everything and start becoming more intentional with what we do carry. Stay with me because this conversation hasn't just changed the way I work, it's changing the way that I live.
Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Custis, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Rise to Shine podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Custis. And as always, I am so incredibly grateful that you are here with us today. Whether you are driving to work, maybe you're walking your dog, or lately I feel like folding loads of laundry, or maybe you're hiding in your car for a few extra minutes because it's the only quiet place you have. Welcome. I'm really, really glad that you are here because today's conversation feels different. In fact, I'm inviting you into, and I've been doing this very recently in the last several episodes, have been inviting you into something that I'm still living, something that I am still uncovering, something that has, I guess you could say, challenged me in a way, but it's also humbled me, quite frankly. And it's changing the way that I see myself. And it's all around this word capacity. It's become one of those words that I feel like gets used quite often. And I hear people saying, like, I'm at capacity. I don't have the capacity. I just can't take on one more thing. As a matter of fact, this morning I said exactly that. I just didn't have the capacity to record an episode with a guest this week, and therefore we're just going to make a solo episode. I just literally said that today. But I want to ask you this. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, what does that actually mean? Because I don't think I ever really did before. I just assumed it meant that I was busy. I assumed it just meant that I needed better time management, or I just needed better planning. I know my morning routine and what I do in my golden hour is just totally beautiful. But sometimes I have to admit, I definitely felt like I just needed a few more hours in the day. And so I start to, go back in my head and I go, do I need to wake up earlier? Maybe I need to get more organized again, or I just need to be more disciplined because, I'm thinking about my business and personal life. And I thought if I did all of those things, maybe it would help me breathe a little bit better. But here's the thing, over the last, I would say, couple of months, life has been challenging those beliefs. And this season, as you know, if you've been around here, if you're new here, you'll just know that this season has asked more of me than I ever expected. We lost Pops, who was my dad for 34 years. I have been walking through grief alongside people that I just love. And I've been trying to understand what it means to lose someone who shaped so much of my life. Then I also was reflecting on my business and seeing how things didn't quite unfold the way that I had imagined it to this summer. And really just, I don't know, just learning more about myself than I ever expected. And then let's just add on top of that, preparing for my son's senior year and realizing just how quickly time moves. And then also trying to just keep showing up for women, trying to show up for my family, for myself, because none of that happened separately. They all literally arrived at the same exact time. And as I was in the middle of this, as I'm still feeling kind of in the middle of it, I just continue to come back to this question: what if I don't have the capacity for all of this? And I'm not going to lie, it scares me a little bit. And maybe you've asked that to yourself too. And, I don't feel like it's because we're weak. I don't feel like it's because I've been lazy or that I'm failing at anything. It's just because life has become a lot. And I'm going to do my darndest not to cry here, but I've been really emotional lately. And, anyway, just wanted to preface it with that, with a smile on my face. But it has been a lot. And for you, maybe it is that you're caring for your aging parents and you're still raising kids or teenagers. Maybe like me, you're navigating perimenopause, menopause, or some of you could be building a brand new business, or you could be like me as well, where you're just grieving someone you love. Maybe keeping a marriage healthy while you're just juggling all these other things, finances, health concerns. I mean, it just all boils down to this like uncertainty of our future. And for me, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like a lot of those things. I would say 9 out of 10 of those things. And here's what I'm learning is when we ask ourselves, do I have the capacity? Most of us immediately start to judge ourselves and we think, great, what's wrong with me? Why can't I handle what everyone else seems to be handling? Why does this feel so hard? And for the first time in my life, I'm really doing such a better job at not judging myself and just getting curious. And I'm going to tell you, getting curious has become one of personally, my greatest teachers. So instead of asking what's wrong with me, I started asking, what is my life trying to tell me right now? And I got to tell you, friends, it is changing things for me because it actually led me to this other realization that I honestly wish someone would have taught me maybe a long time ago because I kept telling myself, I just need more time. Have you ever said that? I just need another hour. I just need one free afternoon. I just need things to slow down. Oh my gosh, I say that all the time. And here's the funny part about it is that there were days where I actually had time. I had a slower morning. I had an afternoon that was free. I had evenings that nothing was scheduled. And somehow I still felt completely over. And then there were days, and this is what's the irony in all of it, is there would also be days that were totally full and my calendar was full. I had things to do and I was running my business. I was loving on my family. I felt like I was very present and alive. And I thought, wow, this feels amazing. I'm getting everything done. So, how can both of these things be true? And that's when it hit me. I have been trying to solve this capacity problem that I've been looking at it as like a problem with time management. And those are not the same thing. Time is what's measured in the hours. Capacity is measured by what our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our nervous system, our souls can actually hold. It's not measured by time. So when I started to realize that, everything started to shift for me. And believe me, it's not because I have all of the answers, but I felt like, oh my gosh, now I'm finally asking the right questions as I got curious. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you've been asking some of those questions as well. And maybe it's just about like reframing them and learning how to ask the right question. So let's start here. What is capacity really? I think we really need to have an understanding of that because I think we've reduced it to one very simple thing. And it was always, how much can I fit into my day? I think I think that's one of the smallest definitions we could possibly give it. And capacity is not what I want you to understand. It's not your planner. It is not your calendar. It is not. How many meetings can I squeeze into an afternoon? It's not that. Capacity is so much deeper. So I've kind of started to think about it this way. Capacity is the amount of life you can hold while still remaining fully yourself. Because there have been seasons where I was incredibly busy and yet I still laughed easily. I was sleeping well. I was creative. I felt really connected to my family and I felt like I could hear God's voice. And I had this margin, or, I always want to say the word capacity for joy. And then on the flip side of it, there have been seasons where one expected phone call or one difficult conversation, one appointment with a doctor, it felt like it just totally tipped the entire scale. And it wasn't that the workload changed, but I had changed. My capacity had changed. And here is where I think we just need to have more conversations around it because I believe that capacity is seasonal, just like nature, just like life, just like us. Think about it for a minute. Trees don't produce fruit all year long. The moon changes, the tides change, seasons change. Even God designed creation to move through rhythms. So, why do we expect ourselves to have the exact same capacity through every single season of our lives? And then why do we compare ourselves to the version of us before the grief or before we had kids, before the menopause, before all of the things life inevitably brings? Of course, we're different. Why wouldn't we be? And that's where I feel like we need to just give ourselves some grace, to stop comparing ourselves to a previous version of ourselves. This is why I always say, I love helping women become the favorite version of themselves because our seasons are going to change and our best is going to look different. So maybe you aren't meant to come back exactly the way that you were before. Maybe we're coming back wiser or maybe just more discerning. Maybe you want to come back and protect those morning routines or your golden hour, which isn't a morning routine. You can fit it into any part of your day because you're starting to learn that peace doesn't happen by accident. I'm learning to rest before I'm completely depleted. And ladies, that's hard for me. So I want to say that rather than looking at life as, oh my gosh, I just don't have the capacity. My capacity has gone away. What if it's just being rearranged? Because that helped to bring some peace for me as I'm walking through this season. And I don't beat myself up going, why can't I do what I used to do? And I, again, just start saying, what is this season asking of me? Because if I question, why can't I keep doing what I was doing? That starts getting rooted in comparison. Whereas when I'm saying, what is the season asking of me? That starts getting rooted in more of the wisdom and getting to know ourselves. And I also thought about this. I felt like capacity isn't just one thing, it's kind of layered. So I want you to imagine your life like a beautiful house, a beautiful home. And if one room starts falling apart, eventually you feel it throughout the entire house. It gets messy and it starts to bleed into the rest of the home. And the same thing happens with us. And as I was kind of doing some of the research, as I was just really digging into this whole idea of capacity, I realized that there were five, let's just metaphorically say there's five rooms in the house of our capacity. So we have our mental capacity, we have our emotional capacity, our physical capacity, our spiritual capacity, and our relational capacity. And here's where I think a lot of us get stuck. We assume we're tired because we're physically tired. But what if you're just mentally exhausted or you're emotionally on overload? or spiritually, you just feel like you're running dry. Relationships, maybe that just feels really depleted. You can get 8 hours of sleep and still wake up exhausted, right? Like we've all been there because sleep is only going to restore one part of us. And then all those other houses are going to still ask for our attention. So again, getting curious, why am I so tired? I can say, which part of me is tired? And then that becomes really just, I don't know, I feel like it becomes more compassionate for myself and it becomes more helpful because, again, I can start to look at the different parts of me and realize that all of these areas need something different. My mind doesn't need the same thing that my heart needs. My body doesn't need the same thing that my relationships need, right? So let's just walk through these together because again, I just feel like it's helping me have these conversations and letting me just have food for thought as I'm walking through seasons that my capacity just feels very full. Okay. So we're not going to diagnose ourselves. That's the first thing, right? We're just going to become more aware because when we become aware, that becomes the first step towards changing. So let's start with our minds. Mental capacity is probably the one that we underestimate the most. And I want you to think about how many decisions you've already made today. So, what are you wearing? What are you going to eat? Who needs a ride today? Which email deserves a response today? If you're like me, which emails need to be deleted today? Did you remember to RSVP for that event? Is your kid okay? Are your parents okay? Is your business okay? Are you okay? We don't realize how much mental bandwidth is constantly being used. And sometimes it isn't the work per se that's exhausting us, it's the constant thinking, it's the decision fatigue, it's the ruminating, it's those invisible tabs we have open in our minds all day long. And then there's emotional capacity. And I think we carry an extraordinary amount of emotions. And here's the thing for me, I don't know about you, but I don't just carry my own. I carry everyone else's too. I carry my children's worries as they've been going through this massive grief and stress for my son becoming a senior and picking out colleges and all the things. We pick up on our spouse's stress. We tap into our friends that are going through a heartbreak, or we tap into our parents' health. And let's just face it, we are tapping into the weight of the world. And if you're someone who loves deeply, who notices people, who naturally just holds space, that emotional weight costs something. And I don't look at empathy as a weakness, I don't. But empathy also requires a lot of my energy. And maybe that's why some days you feel tired or I feel tired before the day has even begun, because emotionally, I've already been carrying so much, right? So let's keep going. We've talked about the 5 areas of capacity, but I don't just want to define them, okay? I don't want to just define them. I want you to think about your own life as we're talking. And again, don't judge yourselves. Just come with curiosity because, again, that awareness is going to change everything. So let's just take a deep breath. Sometimes I need to do that. And let's check in together. And then let's start with our physical capacity. Now, this one is going to feel a little bit more obvious until it isn't, because physical capacity isn't just about how much energy you have. It's about what your body has been trying to tell you that maybe you've been too busy to hear. So, again, let's go through. Are you sleeping? Are you really sleeping? Or are you exhausted all day, only to finally, literally crawl into bed and realize your mind won't shut off? Are you nourishing your body or simply surviving on caffeine? I'm lifting up my coffee cup and whatever you can grab between meetings. Are you moving your body because you love it or because you feel like you should? Have you noticed how stress shows up in your shoulders and in your jaw, in your stomach, in your headaches, your hormones? I'm telling you, our bodies are so wise, and they what I remember my mentor saying, they whisper, right? Our bodies whisper long before they scream at us. And then the question becomes, are we listening to that? So it's very interesting. Here's a perfect example. I was feeling the day after the memorial service, I thought I was going to just rip off the band-aid and I was going to be fine and life was going to go back to normal and I was going to start getting back to normal. I will tell you the day after the funeral and the day after that were the worst 2 days besides the one where he passed. The hardest, most emotional days. I was not expecting that at all. And I was telling my husband, oh my gosh, my shoulders feel so tense. My neck was hurting. I was really not in good shape. And literally a couple days later, my back completely starts spasming and goes out, just locks up. As a matter of fact, today is the first day that I'm actually sitting here able to work in the last several days because my back has been so locked up. I have been literally on a heating pad almost all day, every day. So my body was keeping the score. I was holding all of that stress. And yes, things were starting to whisper, but then it screamed and was like, okay, you're not going to listen. You're not going to take me seriously. Back is locking up. And now you're forced to lay down because you can't even move. And I'm not saying it comes as a punishment. That's not what I mean. It's just that I could have probably been taking care of myself a little bit better leading up to that point, right? So now let's talk about our minds because I think this might be where so many women are quietly actually drowning. Not because they're incapable, but because they're mentally carrying 1,000 open tabs. Have you ever had one of those days where someone asks you a simple question and you just stare at them blankly? And it isn't because you don't know the answer, it's because your brain has literally reached its limit. You're remembering all the appointments. You're remembering, okay, I've got to pay these bills. Okay, what are we going to have for dinner? Trying not to forget things, right? You're planning the weekend ahead. You're thinking about tomorrow. Your husband's going, hey, where are we going to go on vacation? You're also just trying to remember if you responded to somebody. And so it's no wonder that we feel overwhelmed. We're asking our minds to carry more than they were ever designed to hold. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is just write it down. Just get it out of your heads. I love a good brain dump. I have not been as good about those brain dumps, and I have started to do them in the last couple of days because I'm like, ooh, I need to create a little breathing room and I need to get out of my head because I do believe that not only does a cluttered home take up space, but also a cluttered mind makes everything feel heavier. And then there's the emotional capacity. And this one, I think this one deserves our attention because we become real emotional caretakers. We don't just, like I was saying earlier, we don't just feel our own emotions. So we absorb a lot of the tension in the room. And oh man, this has been big for me lately. It just really has. So I just, want to say something here that I think we all need permission to hear. You can be deeply compassionate without carrying everyone else's healing. Loving people doesn't mean we're carrying what belongs to them. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is stand beside someone without trying to carry them. I know it's hard. And then there's spiritual capacity. This one feels deeply personal to me because I know what happens when I stop creating space for God. I start believing all of the thoughts that are entering my mind. I start reacting instead of responding. Ooh, man, do I do that. I do start to try to control things, and I don't love to admit that, but I do that when I'm just not letting God take the wheel. And I start to carry burdens that aren't mine. And I really understood how important those quiet moments are for me. That rhythm in my golden hour, the coffee before the house wakes up, the prayer, the just, being the silence, not because I'm trying to check this box, but because I just need to remember who I am. I need to do that with the frequency healing. I need to do that with all of those things that I've loved creating a rhythm for because it's before the social media, it's before the emails, it's before I turn the world on in some way, shape, or form. I just need to return to the one who created me. And every single time I do that, I leave lighter than I arrived. And finally, your relational capacity. This one has been stretching me a little bit too because, whew, relationships, gosh, so much I could say about this. But they do require presence. And presence is becoming one of my favorite words. It really is. Because when we're operating at full capacity, the people we love the most often get what's left over. They get the leftovers. They get the short answers. They get the distraction when we're in conversations. They get the really tired version of us. And it's not because we love them less, because we've given everything away before we got home or before they got home. And that is what made me really sad because that's not the woman I want to become. I don't want to build a beautiful business and miss the beautiful people sitting around my dinner table. I don't want to create all this meaningful work while forgetting to create beautiful moments. Because at the end of my life, I don't think anyone is going to remember how quickly I answered emails. Now, you might remember that from my husband. You might go, man, he always responded really fast because he does. He's so great at that. But you're not going to remember me that way. What I want people to remember is how I made them feel. And that's the invitation for all of us. Because as I was at my father-in-law's funeral, or I should say celebration of life, we had the memorial and then afterwards we had a celebration of life. I'm telling you, the stories and what people brought up, there was a pattern, there was a common thread, and it was all about how did he make them feel? Oh my gosh. It was huge. I couldn't even believe it. I mean, I could give you so many examples. It's amazing. Like down to father figures, down to women that worked for him in the 1980s that came up and spoke and gave little stories of what he did for them personally that I didn't even know about. Oh, it was so good. But it made me think about this. It made me think about being more intentional. And it made me realize how I need to make sure that I am taking care of all of my houses, right? And I've had to give myself permission to grieve, and it's been weird. I keep saying, man, I thought I've grieved before, but like this grief hit me really hard and very differently. So we all have different needs. And that's exactly why capacity can't be solved with better time management. It has to be understood, it has to be honored, and it has to be trusted. You have to trust it. Because here's what I know now. When one area of our capacity starts running low, we eventually start to feel it everywhere. It's kind of like, when you're driving your car, I had this signal come on when I was driving back to the desert a couple weeks ago. One of my tires was low and I was losing air in that tire. And at first I didn't even notice. I was like, what is happening? Like, why is this blinking on my dashboard? But eventually the entire ride started to change because it was affecting everything. So when every area of our capacity is feeling depleted, that's when we start saying things like, oh my gosh, I don't even recognize myself anymore. I've lost my spark. I'm barely surviving. And friend, if that is you today, I want to just remind you of something. You have not lost yourself. You have been carrying more than your soul was meant to carry. And those are not the same thing. So again, now comes the question I've been asking myself for months. If capacity isn't something we simply have, what is quietly stealing it? Because I don't think most women wake up one morning and suddenly say, I'm at capacity. I think it happens gradually, that we don't even notice it. It's like carrying a backpack. Imagine for a second that every time something hard happens in life, someone quietly slips a rock into that backpack. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you, I went on a retreat and we did something very similar to this. We wrote on the rocks and we put the rocks in. And there was like a rock of grief. And there, the words that were on here were things like disappointment, worry, people pleasing, perfectionism, pressure. So the one rock that we put in wasn't heavy. And even two or three, not terrible. But eventually, when we had a whole full backpack full of them and we had to walk the same distance, you guys, that became really heavy, really, really heavy. And it was so interesting because once we let go, and I have to say, like, I kept thinking, like, why are we carrying all these rocks across the beach? Like, this is so hard. I am like so done with this. What's the point of this, right? Then I was like, oh, once we started to release them, I was like, oh, it's becoming lighter, but I forgot what it even felt like when I had a lighter load. I had forgotten myself. So that's what I thought of too, is just this whole backpack thing. Because when someone asks us, oh, how are you doing? What do we normally say? We normally say, I don't know, I'm busy. Life is good. Life is full. Life is, when we're asked, those are the things that we say. And what's interesting is that what I realized is that that probably isn't what I should be answering. I need to answer like what it is that I'm carrying in my heart, because that's where I feel like the capacity part lives. And I think that that's when we need to just be honest. And again, you don't need to go into your whole life story, right? You don't need to do that. But we also need to understand that there are things that are occupying space. And if our capacity is feeling full in one of those five areas, it probably will start to seep into other areas if you're not taking care of it. And so I don't want you to get to the point where all five of those houses are at full capacity and especially still expect to function the way that you did before, because then that's when we put more on top of everything. So take the permission to be honest with yourself, to get curious with yourself, especially if you have experienced something really hard recently. Your capacity is supposed to look different right now. And know that that's not weakness. That's just being human, right? It's just being human. I mean, I'm looking at it and I'm going, I'm not going to beat myself up for just feeling like I need to make room. I need to figure out some things as I'm walking through this grief. Also, when my business kind of like took a massive pause this summer, I wasn't expecting that, but I'm leaning into it because I realized that my backpack was fully getting loaded with a lot of rocks. And then I realized, man, I've been carrying a lot of stuff. And then comes all the stories that happen is not only do we recognize the weight of it, but then we start to question ourselves like, am I not enough? Maybe I missed my chance. Why is everybody else moving forward except for me? But I just feel like through this, as I'm kind of coming to the end of the summer, we're getting ready to pack up and go back home. I'm realizing that I feel like God was maybe protecting my capacity, especially with my business. Like, had it blown up the way I had anticipated, would I have been able to carry it all? Right? Would I have had the emotional space to be able to sit in the hospital rooms when I needed to be there to be really present with him? Would I have been able to support my family the way that I did? I don't think I would have. I think I would have been all over the place. And I don't understand God's timing all the time. I don't, but I trust it as much as I possibly know how to do, because sometimes we're just having our hearts protected. Sometimes that's what it is. And I've learned a lot through prayer. I've learned a lot through human design. I've done a lot of work on myself, just really learning how to pay attention because I don't think there's just one tool that solves all of our problems. I don't. But I think God gives us so many tools that we can use that can help us solve our problems and trusting how God has uniquely designed me. So, I want for me to start honoring ourselves. I am going to say this out loud. I am not wired to constantly produce. I am actually wired to gather, to connect, to create beautiful rooms where people feel safe enough to become themselves. And when I operate from that place, I don't necessarily have less to do, but I experience life differently. Because here's the thing, alignment creates your capacity. And misalignment, and I've had a lot of misalignment this summer, that drained my capacity. So yes, do I think a lot of us are exhausted? Not because we're doing too much, but because we're spending so much energy trying to be someone we were never created to be, trying to fit into somebody else's definition of success, trying to force, here's my thing, is trying to force this pace that doesn't match my season. And maybe even trying to live in someone else's rhythm. So no wonder why we're tired. No wonder. So, what can you lovingly release today? Because maybe creating more capacity isn't about adding one more thing to the routine. It's not going to be this productivity hack. It's just about putting down what no longer belongs in your backpack. It's cleaning up the rooms in your house, right? I had the belief that my value is connected to how much I can carry. I'm kind of ashamed to say that a little bit, but it is my truth. But I realized my worth was never determined by what I produce. God actually never asked me to carry all of the things. I feel like He's just been asking me to trust Him with the things that were not mine to carry in the first place, and then to just carry the things that are meant for me. And that gives me a little bit more freedom and it makes me feel a little bit lighter. So instead of how do I carry more, how do I steward the capacity I already have? Because we do have it, we do have capacity. And stewardship feels better than striving for something. Because again, striving is like do more, push harder, figure it out. Whereas when I steward something, I can say I care well for what I've been entrusted with because we have been entrusted with things. So, how can I care well for that? And that includes ourselves, you guys. That includes your mind, your body, your heart, your relationships, your faith. And little by little, one day at a time, through small, intentional rhythm steps, guess what happens? What happens is that it becomes your anchors. You have the anchors. And when life starts to get really stormy, like it has for me in the last several weeks, it's the anchors that kept me steady. And it's also the community that I have that kind of helped to expand my capacity. And I'm so grateful for that because most often healing isn't going to happen in isolation. It happens in those safe relationships and in those really honest conversations. I really, really do believe that. And I love when I can remember that I don't have to carry life alone, right? Because we are thinking that people have all the capacity and we compare ourselves. And I'm going to tell you, she doesn't exist. She doesn't. So, as we wrap up today, I don't want to leave you with this like big old long checklist. I just want to leave you with a few questions. What are you carrying that was never yours to carry? What expectations have you placed on yourself that God never placed on you? And what is this season asking of you? Not last season, not the next season, but this one. Because I think that's going to be your real invitation to become the woman who knows what to carry, what to release, and how to trust God with the rest. So, thank you for being here today. If this episode encouraged you, would you just share it with another woman who might need this reminder today? these conversations spread because you share them. And I promise you, I never take that for granted. And I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me think out loud again and just continue to process this season with you. And I am here. I am walking through life with you. So just know that. And until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and know that your best day is right here waiting for you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review, and don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my friends.